I've been on the road for 12 hours straight, riding the line between exhaustion and hallucination when I first saw him. A lone figure on the shoulder, half illuminated by my high beams, thumb hanging out like he'd been carved into the desert night. The highway was nothing but a ribbon of black asphalt cutting through the scrub and the rock. No towns for miles. No reason for anybody to be out here. My first instinct was to keep driving. I've been warned far too many times. Don't pick up hitchhikers. But my guilt has a way of working its claws in. The longer I look at the figure shrinking in my rear view, the more it felt like I just left a body on the roadside. I don't know why I slowed, but I did. Tires humming against the asphalt as I pulled off onto the shoulder, gravel popping under the weight of my car. He jogged up, lanky and wiry, maybe in his mid-30s. Dirty jeans, canvas jacket, hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. When he opened up the door, I caught the sour smell of somebody who hadn't showered in definitely a few days, maybe more. He slid in without another word, clutching a ragged backpack up against his chest like it was the only thing anchoring him to earth. "Thanks," he muttered. "No problem," I said, putting us back on the road. "Where are you heading?" He glanced out the window, eyes scanning the darkness. "Gas station, just the next one." "Long way to be walking," I said, trying to keep the mood light. "Lucky I came through, huh?" He didn't laugh, he didn't even smile, he just kept staring off into the black desert. I figured maybe he was shy or strung out or maybe both. But a few miles later, I heard him muttering under his breath. Some kind of chant maybe. I looked over and saw his lips moving, eyes fixed on the side mirror. "You okay over there?" I asked. He blinked. "We're fine," he said. "Just keep driving. Don't slow down." That sank into me. Not the kind of thing you want to hear at 1 a.m. in the middle of nowhere with a stranger riding shotgun. "Don't slow down?" I asked. "They'll catch up if you do." His voice was calm, matter of fact, like he was telling me water was wet or the sky was blue. I gave him a nervous lap back. Who's gonna catch up?" But he didn't answer, just hugged that backpack tighter and kept looking out the window. I checked the mirror myself and my stomach knotted. A pair of headlights, distant, but they were gaining. I've been alone on the road for over an hour now, not a single car. Now suddenly there was somebody behind us. "That a friend of yours?" I asked. "No," he responded. "Just drive." I pressed the accelerator a little harder, engine whining as the speedometer climbed. The headlights behind us matched it perfectly. The car behind us stuck like glue. Every time I eased off the gas, its headlights swelled bigger in the mirror. When I pushed the pedal, it would match me, keeping just enough distance to make sure that my skin would crawl. I gripped the wheel tighter, my mouth was getting dry, while a stranger beside me muttered and clutched his backpack. "Alright, you gonna tell me what's going on?" I snapped. His voice dropped. "They followed me, I got away, but they don't let people go. Nobody gets out, not for free." "Okay, what do you mean they?" Then he turned to me, face pale in the glow from the dash. "Just keep driving." That wasn't an answer, at least not good enough for me. I tried telling myself it was a coincidence, that maybe it was just another innocent driver heading the same direction, but deep down, I think I knew better. It wasn't a coincidence, this was a pursuit. I flicked the headlights to high, leaning into the speed, 80, 85, 90. My tires buzzing against the asphalt, a low howl that made it feel like the car could lift off the road at any second. The headlights behind us grew smaller, then steadied, still keeping pace. "They're not gonna stop," that guy whispered. "Not till they have me back." I shot him another glance. His hands were trembling as they were clamped still over that backpack. What the hell's in there? "Proof." His eyes flashed in the dark. "Enough to ruin them. They can't let it get out." My blood iced over. I wanted to press for more, but there was a part of me that already knew the truth was probably uglier than I could actually stomach. Whoever these people were, they weren't just pissed off friends chasing down a runaway. It smelled bigger, dirtier. The road sign loomed up ahead of us, green letters shining gas. 15 miles. I clenched my jaw. 15 miles might as well have been 100 at this point. The car behind continued to inch closer, the glare of its high beams flooding my mirrors until I couldn't see a damn thing. The engine roared as it closed the gap. "Hold on," I barked over at him. They rammed us. Just a kiss at first. I shuddered through the frame of my car, enough to make the hitchhiker yelp. Then again a little harder, shoving us forward. My teeth rattled. I swerved, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me alive. "They're gonna force us off the road," he shouted. He was probably right, but all I could do was just brace for it. The highway curved left and I took it fast, the tires screaming against the pavement. The other car hung back for a breath, then lunged again, its headlights searing into my vision. I thought about letting him out, about slamming the brakes and tossing that stranger back on the road, handing him over to whatever nightmare he brought into my passenger seat. But I couldn't. It was too late for that now. I was in it. And then, blessed sight, the faint glow of lights on the horizon. The gas station. I floored it, praying the car wouldn't spin out before we actually made it. The station sat lonely in this island in the desert, buzzing neon signs and a couple of flickering lamps. No other cars, no other sign of life, just 4 pumps and a greasy little building squatting under the weight of the night. I slammed quickly into the lot, brakes damn near smoking, the smell of burnt rubber choking out in the air. The hitchhiker was out before we'd even fully stopped, immediately bolting for the door. I shouted at him to wait, but he was already gone, backpack slamming against his side as he sprinted inside. The other car peeled in behind us, engine growling, headlights snapping off, and for the first time I saw the shape of it, this old black sedan, windows tinted dark. The doors creaked open in unison. 2 men then stepped out, big blocky shoulders, work boots hitting the concrete with slow, heavy steps. They didn't rush, their confidence almost made my stomach turn again. One of them looked straight at me, a dead stare that pinned me to the seat. He then turned and followed that hitchhiker into the gas station. The other stayed outside, leaning up against the car, like a watchman. Now, I should have just driven off. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to floor it, get out of there, leave this stranger to whatever the hell he'd signed up for, but I sat there, frozen, my breath fogging up the windshield. My curiosity ended up being stronger than my fear, and maybe, just maybe, my guilt too. Through the door of the gas station, I could see the hitchhiker at the counter, shouting at the weary clerk. The man outside pulled something from his jacket, tucking it close to his leg. It had to be a gun. Now that broke the spell. I shoved my door open and staggered inside. My voice cracked. "Hey, what the hell's going on?" The one by the car turned his head slowly, like he couldn't believe I was dumb enough to step out. "Go home," he said, calm and quiet, the kind of voice that promised you didn't really want to hear it twice. But it was already too late. Inside the station, the hitchhiker ripped open his backpack, spilling out these papers and photos across the counter. The clerk's eyes went wide. He said something frantic. I couldn't quite hear it through the glass. Then the second man stormed in, shoving the man against the shelves. A soda display crashed to the floor, cans rolled everywhere. The hitchhiker's voice broke through the chaos, desperate. "Call the cops. Don't let them take me back." And for a split second, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd actually be saved. Then the man with the gun raised it, leveled it, and everything froze. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move, could only watch as the desert night pressed in around us. The ugly truth of what I'd stumbled into finally bared its teeth. The moment stretched like it was caught in amber. My eyes locked on the barrel of that gun, the way it glinted under those lights. The hitchhiker froze, one arm still clutching the counter, his mouth hanging open mid-plea. I wanted to move, I wanted to do something, yell, rush in, knock the gun aside like in the movies, but I was rooted to the pavement, hands trembling uselessly at my side. The man outside, the watchman, never even looked away from me. He didn't need to say another word. The message was carved in stone: stay put or join him. A thunderclap cracked inside the station. The clerk screamed. The hitchhiker dropped like his strings had been cut, a smear of red blooming across the tile. Papers scattered across the floor, photos of men in uniforms, documents stamped with logos that I couldn't quite read from where I was. Evidence, at least that's what he said. evidence that would obviously never leave that counter. The shooter knelt, grabbed the backpack, stuffed the scattered proof back inside with cold efficiency, then stood and calmly strode for the door. The clerk stood frozen behind the register, hands covering her mouth, eyes huge. Our gazes locked for a quick second, and I'll never forget that look. She knew she just witnessed something that she would never unsee. The two men stepped back out into the night, one carrying the backpack, the other wiping his hands across his jacket, and then tossed another glance at me, almost like I was less than dirt. They got back in the sedan, doors shut with muffled thuds. The engine purred to life, then they were gone, taillights shrinking back out on that black highway, just like that. I stumbled inside. The clerk was shaking, tears streaking down her cheeks, staring at the body on the floor. We need to call somebody," I stammered out. "The cops?" She shook her head violently, eyes still really wild. "No, you don't understand. You didn't see them. You didn't see them." "But he's dead." She grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt, nails digging deep. "Go, right now. Leave before they come back. Forget that you were ever here." I yanked free, but the look in her eyes was really enough. Terror, not of me, not even of the dead man bleeding in her linoleum, but of whoever those men really worked for. I backed out of the station. My car sat under those buzzing lights, engine still warm, door hanging open. I climbed back inside. The road ahead was empty again, my headlights carving out a narrow path, and I drove it like a man possessed, half expecting to see those same red taillights to reappear in my mirror now at any second. But they didn't. The highway gave me nothing but silence and distance. Hours later, when I finally hit the outskirts of the next town, I pulled into a diner lot and sat there until dawn, watching the sun crawl up over the desert. I called the police. How could I not? I made a report over the phone, and the dispatcher knew exactly what I was talking about. An officer met me at the diner an hour later to get some more details from me. It was some kind of ongoing murder investigation. I told him everything, especially about how the clerk told me to go. They said they were taking extra time to look into her as well. The vibe I got was that she was some kind of drug dealer of some kind, and the hitcher was involved with her. The cop left, and I was all alone. So I just sat there, silently, until the smell of coffee drifted out of the parking lot and the world started moving again like nothing had happened. And that's when I realized, whatever that man had been running from, it wasn't just his nightmare. He handed me a piece of it the second I let him into my car. We'd been on the road for 6 hours when I saw her. The four of us all packed into Josh's beat-up old Corolla, windows fogged from our breath, the smell of stale fries and gas station coffee turning the cabin quickly sour. College road trips always sounded better than they actually were. On paper, it was supposed to be freedom, music, inside jokes, but in reality, it was endless stretches of asphalt, cramped legs, and everybody getting irritable in waves. The highway dipped through a long stretch of pine, then spat us out by this old railroad crossing. And that's where she stood. A girl barefoot in the gravel, one arm hugging her stomach, the other stuck out half-heartedly in the universal pick-me-up gesture. Torn jeans, a hoodie 2 sizes too big, hair knotted into greasy ropes. Josh was slowing down before anybody could say a word. Dude, what are you doing?" I asked him. "What? She looks like she needs help." He squinted through the windshield. "It's freezing out there." "I don't care if it's freezing, man. This is how horror movies start." Sarah leaned forward from the back seat, voiced soft. "Come on, she actually looks our age. Would you want to be left out here?" I'll admit that shut me up because no, I wouldn't, and I knew if I was stranded, I'd pray somebody with a shred of compassion would stop for me too. So Josh pulled over. The girl walked up, quite hesitant at first, then faster when she realized we weren't driving off. She bent down and peered into the window. Up close, she looked even worse. Her lips were pale, nose was red, eyes glassy with clear exhaustion. "You headed into town?" she asked. Her voice was rough, like she'd been screaming or crying recently. "Yeah," Josh said. hop in." She slid in the middle of the back seat, pressing close to Sarah. She smelled like sweat and dirt, that kind of dirty you can't really fake. She hugged herself tight and kept her eyes down. "Thanks," she whispered. "I just need a ride away from here." Nobody spoke for a moment. The only sound was the heater rattling weakly, trying to push back the chill. Finally, I cleared my throat. So what are you doing out here?" Her shoulders tensed. "Running." Running from what?" "It doesn't matter." She glanced up. The look in her eyes made me shut my mouth. It was wide, alert, scanning each of us like she was calculating whether we were a bigger threat than whatever she'd escaped from. Josh turned the music down. "Where do you want us to drop you off?" "Just keep driving," she said. "I'll tell you when." The four of us kind of exchanged confused looks, and nobody argued. I kept staring out the window as the pines thickened again, pressing close to the road. My stomach nodded. Something about the way she said running, not walking, not leaving, but running. It really was sticking with me. I didn't know it then, but letting her into the car meant that we'd already crossed a line that we could no longer come back from. The girl really didn't say much after that. She just stared out the window, hands buried deep in the sleeves of her hoodie, rocking slightly. Every once in a while, Sarah would try to strike up some kind of conversation. "Where are you from? Do you need to call somebody?" But the girl's answers were clipped and clearly evasive. Josh kept glancing at me in the passenger seat, his expression saying what we both were thinking. Maybe picking her up hadn't been such a great idea, but none of us had the guts to actually say it out loud. 20 minutes passed, then 30. No towns, no lights, just the highway. I finally turned around, trying to sound casual. "You said you needed a ride into town, right? Which town?" She blinked, like she hadn't really thought that far ahead. "Just keep going. I'll know when." I didn't like that answer. "Look, we can drop you off at a gas station or a diner or something, somewhere safe." Her eyes flicked to mine, very cold-like. "I said, I'll tell you when." The way she said that sent a ripple through the car. Sarah leaned back, folding her arms. Evan, who'd been quiet the whole trip, finally muttered, "Creepy." Josh cleared his throat. "All right, we're not gonna go too far off route though. We still got a long drive ahead of us." That's when she spoke up again. "There's a shortcut up ahead. Turn right at the next dirt road." I frowned. Okay, shortcut to where exactly?" "To town." Her lips twitched into something that might have been a smile, though it never really reached her eyes. Josh's hands tightened on the wheel. I could see the hesitation clearly on him, but he was always too trusting in people. "All right, I guess if it's quicker." The dirt road appeared out of the darkness, a thin strip vanishing into heavy woods. Josh turned onto it. Gravel pinged against the undercarriage. The headlights cut this narrow tunnel through the trees. Every nerve in my body was screaming that this is wrong. This isn't what we should be doing. We hadn't passed another car in an hour, and now we're leaving the only highway that actually might lead to somewhere. But the girl just leaned back in her seat, finally looking relaxed, and that really scared me more than anything else. "See?" she said. "Told you." The deeper we went, the worse it continued to feel, though. No houses, no mailboxes, just trees and blackness. The dirt road narrowed, rougher with every bend, until it felt less like a road now and more like a trail. Evan leaned forward between the seats. "Dude, this is not a shortcut. There's no way." Josh slowed down a little. "How much further?" "Not far," the girl responded back. I twisted in my seat to face her again. "Look, I don't really know what's going on, but this doesn't feel right. Where exactly are you taking us?" "Almost there." Again, the way she talked, the way she said everything, it was really starting to terrify me. And then the first set of headlights appeared off in the trees to the left, half hidden, then another on the right. Parked vehicles, their shapes hulking in the dark. A pickup, an SUV, another car. My chest went cold. "Josh," I said, "turn around now." Before he could do much, the figures stepped out of the trees, 3, 4, 5 of them, shadows moving up the road, lit up in the headlights. Men, big men, their faces cast in shadow, but their postures said everything we needed to know. They'd been waiting for us. Josh slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a stop, dust clouding the beams. The girl straightened up, suddenly more calm and collected. She looked at us, finally meeting each of our eyes in turn. "Hey, thanks for the ride," she said. The doors opened and the men started toward us, slow and steady. One had a flashlight. Another held something heavier, maybe a pipe, maybe a bat. My stomach immediately flipped. Sarah gasped out loud. "Oh my God." Evan swore under his breath. "She set us up. She fucking set us up." Josh fumbled for reverse, tires spinning as the car jerked backwards. The men then surged forward, shouting, hands pounding on the hood. One yanked at the driver's handle. Another pounded the glass by my head. "Go, go!" I screamed. Josh floored it. The Corolla jolted backward, swerving off the road and then into a ditch. The bumper slammed hard in the dirt, and the tires squealed as he fought for the wheel. One of the men slipped in front of us, and Josh swerved again, missing him only by inches. The girl didn't move. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, watching us like we were nothing more than a delivery that had arrived early. We hit the dirt road again, fishtailing. The men shouted, one of them running after us for a few yards before fading off into the dark. The headlights of the parked vehicle snapped on, and the engines roared to life. "They're coming," Sarah said. I twisted in my seat. Sure enough, beams of lights were cutting through the dust, bearing down fast. Josh was white-knuckling the wheel. "Hold on," he barked. The Corolla screamed down the trail, bouncing over ruts, barely holding together. The trees whipped past in a blur. My heart was currently in my throat, waiting for the moment one of those bigger trucks to ram us from behind, flip us back into a ditch. But somehow, by some miracle, we burst back out onto the highway. The other vehicles didn't seem to be following either. We drove in silence, every one of us heaving for breath, hearts pounding like war drums. Nobody dared to speak, not even Sarah this time. Finally, I turned around, and the back seat was empty. The girl was gone. The silence in the car was heavier than anything I've ever felt. All 4 doors were locked. Engine was screaming down a highway, but the space between Sarah was now empty. The hoodie, the bare feet, the sour smell, gone, like she'd never even been there. Josh's voice cracked. Where the fuck did she go?" "She was just right," Sarah stammered out, spinning around, her hand patting the seat like the girl might have slipped under it somehow. "She was just here." "No fucking way," Evan muttered, shaking his head. His face was ghost white. "No way. She got out back there. She must have, when the guys were on us." But I was watching. I saw her sitting perfectly still, hands folded. She hadn't moved a muscle when we tore out of that trap. There hadn't been time for her to jump out. No chance she could have slipped free without us noticing it. But she must have, right? "Look, it doesn't matter how, she's gone now, and we need to keep driving." Josh didn't argue with me. He pushed the car a little harder. None of us looked back, terrified we'd see those headlights flaring up in the distance again. It wasn't until nearly an hour later, when the lights of a real town finally glowed on the horizon, that anybody spoke up. Sarah's voice was barely audible. She wasn't running from anyone. And we all know she was right. She didn't need saving. She'd been bait, dangled out there like meat on a hook, waiting for some bleeding heart idiot to scoop her up and deliver her straight to the jaws of whatever the hell operation those men were running. We rolled into town just after dawn, pulling into a diner lot like survivors. We didn't even go inside, we just sat there, faces pale, eyes empty. I kept thinking about her last words when she was in the car. Almost there. She hadn't been talking about any town. She'd been talking about the trap, and we'd driven her right to it. Even now, years later, when I pass a lone hitchhiker on some forgotten back road, I grip the wheel and keep driving because I know better. Some people aren't running from danger. Some people are the danger.